Hey guys, it's Miss Carlson again. Today we're going to talk about the chemistry of life that is covered in section 2 of the textbook. I want to let you know you do not have to take notes on the first two sections. I will let you know when you really need to start taking notes because basically I'm going to review a little bit at the beginning and explain why this topic is important to you. Feel free to take notes on that if you need to, but you don't have to. And make sure you have either a notebook sheet of paper or one of my Cornell note templates to help you take good notes. Here we go. So why is biochemistry important to you? Well, it has everything to do with how your body works properly. And good nutrition is going to help our body work properly and have the materials necessary to support it, as well as prevent common health problems simply through a healthy diet. So we can grow, we can maintain and repair body structures, protect, detox our cells, and also allow them to reproduce just by having a good diet. Now, the body is made up of many cells: blood, bone, skin, nerve, muscle, just to name a few. And there's trillions of them, and they all work together to put together our physical structure. You can kind of think of them as the building blocks of our body. They need good nutrients that you take in through food in order to work properly. So you've heard of probably quite a few of these, and the macronutrients are the ones that we need in large amounts. And we know them as carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Each one of these is essential. I know you've probably heard of the Atkins diet where they try to limit carbs, and you've heard obviously a lot of people try to avoid fat sometimes from the diet, but there are good fats and bad fats. There are good carbs, there are bad carbs, and of course we still always need a lot of protein either way, but you should never eliminate any of these things from your diet because you need them in some capacity. Now, your micronutrients we need in small amounts, and these are your vitamins and minerals. If you've ever looked at the side of your cereal box, there's a whole list of nutrition facts, and towards like the middle, the bottom, they always have a list of a lot of these micronutrients. Iron, selenium, manganese, chromium. You probably see riboflavin was one that always stuck out to me because I thought the name was funny. So just tiny amounts is good enough for our body to function. Now, we know that we need to generally take in about 2,000 to 2,500 calories to power ourselves throughout the day and to do our daily activities, sometimes more if you're really active. So calorie is our measure of energy, and that is what we get when we take in food and through the chemical processes that our body provides us to break down that energy into a usable form. So you may have been told maybe there's something that you like to eat a lot like pizza, and I know my parents always used to say, oh, you're going to turn into a piece of pizza, if it was something that I ate a lot. And it really is true, you are what you eat because you are what your cells can assimilate, or what they are provided with is all that they have to work with. So whatever you put into your body is what your body's going to use to work, and if you don't give them good stuff, then your body's not going to be able to work as well as it should. So keep that in mind. Now, our quick review. Just remember that atoms, they are the basic unit of matter made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and that a pure substance is made up of only one type of atom is known as an element. And the element that we're going to particularly focus on today is carbon, and we'll get into that here in a second. Remember that compounds are made up of two or more elements in a definite proportion and generally held together with ionic bonds or covalent bonds, and then you have your van der Waals forces that act in between molecules of opposite charges. Quick refresh on covalent versus ionic. Notice these hound dogs here, they're sharing a bone, and covalent bonds work through sharing electrons. Ionic bonding is where one atom gives an electron and one takes, and therefore there forms an electric charge or an ionic bond in between the two elements. Water is a particularly different molecule. It is polar, and those charges among the atoms are unevenly distributed, creating this slightly negative and slightly positive charge, and that's why they can actually attract each other, like you can see in this picture here. Hydrogen cannot pull electrons as strongly as oxygen can, therefore oxygen is more negatively charged just a little bit, and hydrogen is positive, allowing the water molecules to attract to themselves because the opposites attract. And again, that's what creates some of the unique characteristics that water has. Now, remember mixtures. We have two main types. We have solutions made up of two parts, the solute and the solvent. And if I create you a little drawing here real quick, let's just say I wanted to make the easiest thing maybe to talk about is Kool-Aid. And am I cool? Right? Alright, so this is my water. Not perfect, but hey, good enough. Speaking, red Kool-Aid's always best. So this is my Kool-Aid powder that I'm going to put into the water. And eventually, right when we put that in there, it's all going to mix, and that's going to look like red Kool-Aid. So the solvent part of this is your water. Water is a universal solvent. Anything, most things can usually mix into it. And then your solute is your Kool-Aid. And eventually you won't be able to see the two separately. It will mix together. And that would be a solution. Now, a suspension is where the solute never really blends, and you always can see that, generally speaking, most of the time you can see the two parts separately. Kind of like if you ever took a part of the beach home with you, you took a bottle and poured some of the ocean and some of the sand, and if you shake it up, it would all mix, but then once you set it down for a little while, the sand will separate from the ocean water again, and you can see the two separate layers. So that would be like a suspension. All right, now here's where I want you to start taking some good notes. We're going to get into what carbon compounds, or otherwise known as macronutrients, are. And they are classes of chemical compounds we consume in large quantities and provide us with the energy we need to go about our day. So remember how I mentioned carbon was the element that we're going to talk a lot about because it is a big deal. It's made up of 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. That's its composition. And it's abundant in all known life forms, and actually what gives us our organic molecules versus our inorganic. Carbon has to be there, specifically carbon-hydrogen bonds has to be in something if we consider it organic or living, and if it doesn't have that, then we consider it inorganic or not living. And with carbon, we are able to form large polymers or big organic molecules like the ones we are about to talk about. So the 4 main organic compounds made up of carbon, not exclusively, but that's the key component, is carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Again, we know these as macromolecules as well, or giant molecules, and they are made from thousands of smaller ones through a process called polymerization. So we take these smaller units called monomers, and each different macromolecule has a different monomer that you piece together to form a polymer, or the actual macromolecule itself. So if you take a look at carbohydrates, the primary source of energy in the diet, so this is where we get the bulk of our energy if we talk about the macromolecules singly. It's made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and we tend to call our complex carbs starches. They're made up of single units of single sugar molecules, and 45 to 65% of your caloric intake is usually going to be from carbs. Now, those single monomers that make up the larger polymer are monosaccharides when we're talking about carbs, which is a single sugar molecule, and some examples are glucose, fructose, and galactose. A lot of people have probably heard of glucose, especially people that have diabetes, or if you've been around anybody that has diabetes. Then you have disaccharides. Those are double sugar molecules. It's just a combination of 2 monosaccharides, or again 2 single sugar molecules. And there are some examples. Now, I know those words are very big, but if you can just remember the prefixes indicating how many sugar molecules there are, and saccharide you can just think of as meaning sugar and relating to carbs. Our last carb type is the actual polysaccharide, or the large polymer that's made of several sugars. You could have all the same monomer, like all glucoses that would form glycogen or starch, or you can have a mixture. Our complex stored carbohydrates are known as glycogen in animals, or starch in plants, and there's also structural carbohydrates like chitin in animals and cellulose in plants. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you all have probably tried to squash a bug or stepped on a bug, and then you lift your shoe up and the thing is still alive, and you're like, how is that still living? I just squashed it. Well, their exoskeletons is made up of that structural carbohydrate known as chitin, which is actually pretty tough. And that's usually kind of what you have to get past to squash that poor bug. Moving on to protein. These are also known as polypeptides. So the polymer for the protein is either the protein itself or known as a polypeptide. They are composed of monomers known as amino acids. So a bunch of amino acids joined together with peptide bonds are going to give you your polypeptide or your protein. There are about 21 different amino acids that can build a protein, And DNA is going to give us the instructions to build those proteins, and they have so many functions within our bodies. They're parts of cell membranes. They act as enzymes. They're vital molecules of our immune system. They help form muscles and bones. They also transport substances in and out of the cell. And we'll touch on all of these functions in different times throughout the year. Then you have our lipids. They're chemically defined as a substance that is insoluble in water, but basically another word for them is fats. This also includes our oils. The phospholipids are the ones that make up our cell membranes, and then waxes and steroids. They're made up of a type of alcohol known as glycerol, along with 3 fatty acids known as triglycerides. So again, these are macromolecules that you want to take in moderation, but you do need them because they are the storage form of energy, kind of like our backup when we don't have enough carbs. And they really don't have a set monomer for this particular macromolecule. Nucleic acids, our last one. They contain hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, of course, along with nitrogen and phosphorus. The monomer that builds a nucleic acid is known as nucleotides, which have 3 basic parts, also shown in this picture here, made up of a 5-carbon sugar, a phosphate group, and then a nitrogenous base. They are there to store and transmit our hereditary or genetic information. Nucleic acids are not something that we can take in through food. It's something passed on to us in our genes that are in our cells from our parents. So the examples for nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. And here is a picture of DNA showing you the actual structure. And we will actually get more into DNA later on this semester. But for now, that is all you need to know. Have a good day. I will see you next time.